Hello, my name is Ekaterina. In this presentation, I will tell you about our study of failure behavior of human trabecular bone. First of all, I will make a short introduction to tell you about two types of bone, trabecular and cortical bone, and about architecture of trabecular bone. Then we'll talk about loading of bone and daily activities and failure of bone. This will be followed by description of mechanical properties of trabecular bone and bone marrow. And after this, I will tell about our study of bone failure, which includes processing of data, finite element analysis simulation, and machine learning. And I would like to begin with a short overview of the bone structure. Bone consists of two main types of structure, which can be differentiated even by looking on this image of femoral bone cut. The first type of bone structure is called cortical bone, which is strong. It protects the inner bone and also it provides levers for movement and locomotion. Another type of bone structure is called trabecular bone, and as you can see on this image, it's porous, it's also light and provides high stiffness with relatively low mass. And the individual parts of trabecular bone are called trabeculae. And as you can see on the following image, the intertrabecular space is filled with bone marrow, and the liquidous nature of bone marrow is very important when we try to model mechanical behavior of trabecular bone. And in my presentation, I will focus only on mechanical behavior of trabecular bone. Let's now talk about challenges in description of elastic properties of trabecular bone, and in particular about special variability of trabecular architecture. And firstly, architecture of trabecular bone is characterized by thick, vertically oriented trabecula and thinner, horizontally oriented trabecula, which may be present in the form of rods or plates. And as you can see on this image, thick and long vertical trabecula are observed along the axial cut. They function as load-bearing columns, while thinner horizontal trabeculae are better observed along the transverse cut. They mainly contribute to load dissipation and stabilize microstructure of trabecular bone. And this makes trabecular bone isotropic in vertical direction and anisotropic in all other directions. And in addition, trabecular bone significantly differs in its elastic properties in firstly different anatomic locations, for example in the vertebral bodies, which mainly act as bearing columns of body weight, and compare it with a sternum bone, which has a mainly protective functions. The elastic properties in these two different bones will be different. And secondly, even in the same region of bone, from periphery to the center of bone, elastic properties of trabecular bone differ. And as shown in this figure, anterior region of distal tibial bone has the lowest stiffness among all the other regions, which correspond to letter A here. And the medial region of distal tibia has the highest stiffness. During daily and sport activities, bone is subjected to loadings that may vary in direction, in frequency, in duration, and in magnitude. And what's interesting is that trabecular bone strength is characterized by the so-called tension-compression strength asymmetry. It was found that in average, tensile stress of trabecular bone is about just 60 to 70% of its compressive strength. And one of the explanations of this asymmetry is prevalence of compression loading in daily activity of people, which could historically result in formation of the structure capable to resist compression better than tension. And as you can see on this stress-strain curve of trabecular bone, this tension-compression strength asymmetry becomes even more evident when Young's modulus of trabecular bone increase. And because of this asymmetry in bending, which is the most common loading mode in bone failure. The fatal crack is developed on the side of bone subjected to tension. As you can see on this image, the crack starts on the side of bone which is subjected to tension. And in spite of the experimental evidence of the tension compression strength asymmetry, the exact loading conditions that lead to failure of human trabecular bone are currently unknown. And let's now talk about mechanical properties of trabecular bone and bone marrow. Plastic and elastic properties of trabecular bone depend on the level of preservation of these properties. It may be a piece of trabecular bone with marrow, where we can measure mechanical properties by direct mechanical testing, for example, compression and tension, as shown here. Or it may be an individual trabecular, where we can measure mechanical properties by such technique as microindentation, as shown in this image. And values of Young's modulus and yield strengths are usually higher when measured in individual trabecula than when they are measured in piece of trabecular bone. For example, in this table you can see values of Young's modulus and yield strengths obtained by microindentation technique and by direct mechanical testing in compression and in tension. And you can see that values of Young's modulus and yield strengths are higher when they are obtained by microindentation technique of individual trabecula. And as you already have basic knowledge of structure and mechanical properties of trabecular bone, let's now move to our study of trabecular bone failure, and first of all talk about processing of data in this study. And initially we had a set of high-resolution CT scans of distal tibial bone. And for you to understand the location of distal tibia, if you imagine a human skeleton, the distal tibia is located in the lower part of the lower limb. And after this, we separated bone from the marrow in the CT scans using thresholding of the grayscale values. And as you can see on this image, the white is trabecular bone, the black is bone marrow. After that, we repeated this procedure of separation for multiple adjacent CT slices and to obtained 4 by 4 by 4 millimeters voxelized trabecular lattice. And after this, we smoothed this trabecular lattice with different filters and different degrees on smoothing, as you can see on these two images. And I also want to add that marrow is also present in our study. And although you cannot see it in this lattice, in these images, we consider that the marrow filled all the spaces between the trabeculae. And to prepare for the finite element simulation of bone failure, we followed this sequence. Firstly, we assigned plastic and elastic material properties for trabecular bone, as you can see here, and then to bone marrow, based on the data from the literature. And after that, we performed meshing of the bone and again the bone marrow with tetrahedral mesh, and meshing produced about 300,000 elements in total. And after that, we assigned the boundary conditions and loads to bone and again to bone marrow. And lower surface of the cuboid was encastrated, and displacement was applied to the top surface of the cuboid. At this slide, we can see the contour plots of plastic strain in trabecular lattice subjected to 1% strain in compression, in tension, and also subjected to bending. And on the tension plot, we can see that there are more fields with the onset of plastic deformation, and also that the values of plastic strain are higher if we compare them with a compression plot. And also we can see that in trabecular lattice subjected to bending, plastic strain is also present. And the results of all these loading cases highlight the necessity of modeling of trabecular bone not only in elastic but also in plastic region of deformation. And also we have developed machine learning algorithm that can be applied to 2D CT scans of trabecular bone. We apply machine learning algorithm to produce artificial representative volume elements. And at the same time, this algorithm does morphology analysis, which uses certain multi-point morphological descriptors to ensure that volume fraction and morphological parameters of trabecular bone, of initial trabecular bone, are saved. And the artificially generated representative volume elements have morphological characteristics and volume fraction of real trabecular bone, and therefore they can be used in research of trabecular bone of an individual with no need of further CT data. And also they are suitable for testing of various mechanical scenarios. Thank you for your attention. I will be happy to answer your questions.